Welcome to the Audit Review Committee today for January 9th. We'd like to welcome two new members that we have. We have Marilyn Pendleton and Dave Randall down at the end. So thank you, and thank you for being willing to serve. We appreciate it. We'd like to have confirmation and posting of roll call, please, City Clerk.
Thank you. The agenda was posted in accordance with Nevada open meeting law, and all members are present.
Thank you. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This brings us to our first public comment. Is there anyone in the room who would like to come for public comment? Also available is public comment by phone. That phone number is 702-589-9629. Were there any sent in? Any comments? We didn't receive any.
I would have to double check on that. We send them right to the committee members if they come in.
Are we sure you don't want to come make public comment? In the room. Okay, just double checking. One last time for the phone line, 702-589-9629. Is there anyone on the phone? Thank you. Seeing no one on the phone and no one in the room for public comment, we will move to agenda item number 1. This is for possible action, election of Audit Review Committee Chairperson and Vice Chairperson. Do we have any nominations for committee chairperson?
I would like to nominate Sherry Jurgensen for chairperson.
Do we have any other nominations?
I'll second that.
A second, and I believe if we have no other nominations, it's by affirmation. Is that?
Yes, you can ask if there's any further nominations. If not, you would become chairman.
Is there anyone else who would love to do that?
Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, so it looks like Council Member Jorgensen will be committee chairperson. Now vice chairperson, do I have any nominations for that?
I'd like to nominate Roger Tobler.
I was going to nominate Koki.
I see. So now we have 2 nominations, or would someone like to retract their nomination?
No, we can keep it.
With you?
Yeah.
Is there anyone else who would like to nominate at this time?
I'll second Roger.
Okay.
Roger,
I'll
yes.
second Roger.
Okay, seeing nobody else and the initial cookie being taken off the table, Roger, you get to join me and be the vice chairperson.
Congratulations. We'll see you next year, Roger.
We'd like to move on to item number 2 on the agenda for possible action. It's the approval of the December 11th, 2023 minutes. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, we will now move on to agenda item number 3 and have a presentation by our Finance Director, Cynthia Sneed.
There we go. Thank you. There we go. Okay. So I wanted to start with, is particularly for the new members, an overview of what the Audit Committee's roles and responsibilities are. So to start off, just to let you know, that was established in June of 2011 and has been the resolution for that has been replaced a couple of times, and the most current is Resolution 7224 that specifically outlines all the roles and responsibilities. So the 3 bullet points, the 3 main things here are the committee oversees the independent audit, looks at the recommendations for the selection of our independent auditor, which we'll talk more about that in a minute, but that's going to be coming up. And then a resolution of any audit findings that come out of the audit. So we're going to go a little more into detail on each one of those items. So overseeing the audit involves reviewing our comprehensive annual financial report, which is the book that you should have up there at your dais. That report is all the financial statements, but it also includes the independent auditor's report inside of there. So the charge for y'all is considering if that is complete and consistent to the best of your knowledge. Continuing with overseeing the audit, discussing the annual audit with the auditor and management, including any difficulties that were encountered and any audit findings. And then at the end of all of that, the desired outcome is to make a motion to recommend to the city council that they accept or reject the city's financial statement audit and the comprehensive annual financial report as presented. Okay, that second bullet point was about the auditor selection. Periodically, the city goes out for a solicitation to contract with an audit firm to perform the annual audit. Generally, that's every 5 years. This last go-round, it was a 5-year contract with 2 one-year extensions on top of that. We have now exhausted all of those options and extensions. So as soon as we complete this process, we will be turning around and doing a solicitation right away for the next year's auditor. All right, so part of that selection process is to discuss the proposals with management. And if desired and requested, we can interview the finalists. It's up to the committee, and then recommend the selection of the audit firm to city council. So that should be done in March, probably would be taking it to city council. It'll be a pretty quick process. All right, and then that third bullet point was resolution of findings. When there are audit findings that are reported, this committee is responsible for reviewing and discussing those findings with management and with the auditors, and requiring management to create a corrective action plan, and then monitoring that corrective action plan going forward. Okay, continuing with resolution of findings, for the last many years, we have not had any audit findings. However, in this current fiscal year 24 that we're talking about today, we did receive 1 finding from the auditor, and we'll be talking about that in more detail in a minute. And then management's responsibilities is to prepare the financials, prepare in a fair presentation, and it has to be in accordance with the government accounting standards, generally accepted accounting standards. Government has their own set of standards because we're a little bit different, but it's still generally accepted standards. And we are as management responsible for maintaining an internal control system to help mitigate any fraud or misstatements in the financial statements. Okay, and then the auditor's responsibility is to plan and perform the audit, and they also have professional standards that they have to follow, the government auditing standards. And then at the end of that process, they express an opinion on whether the city's financial statements are in compliance with those and fairly present the information. That's pretty much the same thing here. Their standards are to design their work to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance that everything has been done to avoid a material misstatement. And I'm going to have more input from the auditor here in a minute, but how they go about their audit is they look at evidence to determine whether we're in compliance with our own processes and that we're accurately processing those transactions that ultimately result in the financial statements. And they also look at our policies and ensure that they're doing what they're intended to do, and then the overall presentation of the financial statements. Okay, so in a minute, or the next item here is to talk about what that document is, the annual comprehensive financial report. That's the next agenda item. So, any questions on kind of the roles and responsibilities of this committee? Okay. Do we need to have a motion or just, nope? Just right into the next one?
We can move right on to number 4.
I'm sorry? Yeah.
We can move right on to number 4.
Okay, excellent. Holly's got to bring up the PowerPoint presentation for me. Sorry about that. Yes, okay, thank you. So the annual comprehensive financial report is that book that you have in front of you. It is titled comprehensive because it is a very comprehensive document. It's much more than just financial statements. That's kind of the core of it, but there is so much more in there that's meaningful information, and that's hence what makes it comprehensive. So this document is in 3 major sections. There's the introductory section, the financial section, and the statistical section. So we're going to just very briefly go through what's in each of those. In the introductory section, we have a letter of transmittal that talks about the profile of the city, talks about our budgetary control, economic factors that are impacting our financials for the city. It also lists the governing body, all of the council members and management, including an org chart of that and the city staff, the executive staff. This one's very important to me personally. We also display the certificate that we received last year. We have to apply for this every single year. We've received it for 33 years, I believe it is. But it's an acknowledgement by the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association, that it's excellence in financial reporting and that it meets all of their standards of presentation. So we're very proud of that. And that's, again, every year. This is from 2023. I know you can't see it there on the slide. All right, so then we get into the next section, which is the financial section, and that is led with the independent auditor's opinion letter. And in there, they go through a number of things, what they looked at, and I'll let the auditor get into that in a minute. And then this is an important document as well, is the management discussion and analysis. That is management's, as it titled, management's discussion, but we look at comparative information, at factors that are impacting the numbers and the variances from one year to the next, and economic factors. So that's all from the perspective of management. And then when we get into the financial statements themselves, there's 2 basic groupings of funds. And one is the governmental funds, but governmental activities, and the other is business activities. So the governmental activities is all about taxes and intergovernmental revenues, leases, where it's kind of a non-exchange arrangement. And then the expenses are broken out by functions of government, and that's the general government, public works, culture, and recreation. And that all shows you the expenses for the general government. Now, on the business type, that is the enterprise funds, which are our utilities and cemetery, and but that's all driven by user fees. That's not tax supported at all. That's all only the customers that they have are receiving the services, and they pay for that. The intent is really that be self-supporting. Okay. And then as we drill down, the highest level and most consolidated level of these statements are the government-wide financial statements. And then as we go through this, you'll see it. We drill down deeper and deeper into the detail of the statements. But the government-wide shows both of those fund groups, and it talks about the statement of net position, which is like a balance sheet, shows you that point in time, and then a statement of activities that shows the activity for that 1 year and the effect on the fund balance. Then we get into the fund financial statements. Those 2 groups have different basis of accounting, and so they present different things. But the governmental funds has the balance sheet with the reconciliation that accompanies that to the government-wide statements, and similarly, they have their activity statement, which is it's got a long name, the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, which is essentially the income statement. And then again, add reconciliation from fund financials to the government-wide. Okay, then we get into proprietary funds, which are those enterprise funds, the ones that are more business-like. And that's what you would typically see, is very similar to what you would typically see in a corporate kind of a setting. There's not much really to go into that, but then the notes are a really important part. Those give a lot of detail, more information on the amounts that you find on the financial statements. If you want to dig into what's behind those, oftentimes the notes give you that information, and that's probably the biggest single section of the document is those notes. So out of the financial statements, then we get into required supplemental information. Accounting standards require that we do a lot of disclosure on things like pensions and post-employment benefits, and then budget to actuals. And then there's notes to go along with that too. But it's, again, supplementary information that's not on the statements themselves. And then we have other supplementary information that's mostly budget to actual type of information, both major funds and non-major funds. Okay, and then the last third section is the statistical section, which is not so much financial related, but it's a lot of different statistical information about the city, and it's usually a 10-year running comparison, so you can see over time how those different markers have changed, good and bad. And then this year, the single audit will be a separate report. Sometimes it's included with the CAFR, but it is a separate report. So sometimes we do that when we can to make it easier for the reader to have both of those documents in one place. This year, we're going to issue it separately, so that will be forthcoming, hopefully pretty soon. And then this last slide is the different awards that we have won. The one that's specific to this comprehensive annual financial report is the COA. It's the Certificate of Achievement Award. We've got all three of these from GFOA, which gives us the Triple Crown designation, so we're very proud about that. So that's my presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Chad Atkinson, who is the audit partner for our independent auditor, and I'll walk you through. Let me give you this.
Speaker's already on? Okay, great. Members of the committee, it's good to be with you this evening, almost evening. Sun's going down, so it must be evening. I'm Chad Atkinson. I'm the audit partner for the Boulder City Engagement. It's good to be here in person, and I would encourage you as I go through my presentation today, I don't mind this being interactive. If you have questions as we go along, feel free to throw them out. Sometimes it's easier to do that than to wait till the end, so encourage you to do that. And thanks to Cynthia for her great coverage of the comprehensive financial report and giving you the nuts and bolts of what we're talking about. So I'm going to be on my, this slide here. I wanted to just make a couple comments. Thank you for the city staff for helping us with all of the back and forth questions, document exchange, shared documents, questions back and forth, lots of things, right, Cynthia? To complete the audit, we know that an audit is, it takes a lot of effort on the part of the staff, so we appreciate their time, and then also on the part of our team getting it done. So thanks to the city staff, especially here. Wanted to make a comment on the finance department for Boulder City. They had a transition during the year, as you know, with Kyle leaving employment, I think in April-ish, and then Amara coming on after, I think after the fiscal year actually ended. So imagine that you're directing a play, and you direct the whole play for the whole year, and then you leave, and then there's another director that comes in, and they have to finish like fine-tuning the financial statements and the numbers. That's a challenging thing to do. So Amara did a great job kind of jumping in, trying to follow what was going on and everything like that. So You will see as we get down to the findings, I'll discuss one of the findings that we came up with. We believe that it's just a kind of a transitional finding that came up this year in the handoff between Kyle and Amara and all of that process. So just wanted to make a comment there. Also, on the audit timeline, usually we have delivered the audit before January. We've usually been delivering in October sometimes in November, December, depending on the timing. This year there was an extension that was granted by the Department of Taxation to allow us to present it today and then still have it be timely filed by the end of January. So we're good there. Any questions there? Okay, keep going. All right, I'm going to go over the audit reports first. So the independent audit report is found on page 11. It's great reading, especially at night if you need to fall asleep. But it does have in our the first paragraph, it has our opinion on the financial statements. So after procedures performed and everything that we did as part of the audit, we issued an unmodified opinion or clean opinion on the financial statements. And that's the highest level of assurance that can be provided by independent auditors. So congratulations to the city there. On the report on internal controls over financial reporting and on compliance, that's on page 141 in your book. We noted one significant deficiency, and this has to do with just the finance office transition. 2024-001, year-end accounting and financial statement controls. We were presented with a trial balance to complete the audit, and after we were presented the trial balance for the audit, there were several adjustments identified by the city and also several adjustments identified by the auditors during the audit process that caused us to bring this finding forward as a significant deficiency. So there's kind of different levels of controls that you have to have, findings that we have. So material weakness is kind of you don't want to get those, right? Significant deficiencies is kind of in the middle. And so we felt like we should bring to the committee's attention that as far as year-end accounting and financial statement controls, there was some deficiency there in internal controls. So do you have any questions about that? You should have received, I think the written up findings were probably included in your packet to review. So
I couldn't find those. Okay.
Okay, yeah. So there's a schedule of findings and recommendations, but that's basically what it says, is that we found a lot of adjustments after the trial balance was provided to us. So,
And you contribute that to just the change?
yeah, the change. Mhm.
Okay, and the city, obviously they must have worked with you and made the changes necessary.
Yep.
Okay.
We recognized that there were lots of adjustments coming up, and so we kind of tag teamed and identified all of the adjustments that need to be made, and then we believe that these financial statements are materially accurate now. So that is one great thing, just to put a little plug in for our firm. We try to do a good job of recognizing when that may be an issue and being of assistance to the city, not just saying, okay, it's your problem, go fix it. So we recognize that there may have been a little bit of need for help there, and we jumped in and did our best to assist. So, all right, then there should also, I don't know if this has been sent out either, the communication to those charged with governance. That's a separate level. Okay. Cynthia will send that out, but it's basically a standard communication that goes out each year. And I'll just tell you that there were no problems or issues in that communication. It's just the standard communication that we're required to give you. So I don't have anything to mention on that. Any questions there? Okay, we'll go to some financial highlights. If I can cover a few things. We've already talked about governmental funds and proprietary funds. So I'm going to just look at page 29 for a minute. With you, if you've got your books. So this is the income statement for the governmental funds, and I'll give you a minute to just look this over, and I'm just going to make some high-level comments. And thanks to Crimson, who's on my audit team, she prepared these for us today. But the net change in fund balance is about 5 lines from the bottom there. Over on the very right-hand side in the total governmental funds column, you can see that the net change in fund balance was 10.7 million and 10.8 million. That change is an increase in your fund balances. That compared with last year, it was 14.6 million, so it's down just a little bit. In the revenue area, revenues were up 6.4 million from the previous year, mostly in the intergovernmental revenue line item, which is about five lines from the top. There was increased ARPA grant funding, the American Recovery Plan Act grant funding. That was up, it looks like 1.6 million. There was also an increase in Regional Transportation Commission revenues. They were also an increase of 1.6 million for various projects that were done. And then some of the decreases in intergovernmental revenues were the GITM revenues. These revenues tend to come in sporadically, and there were no revenues received in fiscal year 24, but in fiscal year 23, there were quite a few. I think it was 1.9 million last year and then none this year. So on the investment income or investment earnings line item, you can see that was up 2.5 million. Markets are doing well, and so the investments, the funds that are invested for the city have produced some good investment income. On the expenditures, there were 12.2 million. They were up 12.2 million, mostly due to increases in several functions in the general fund, and 5.8 million increase in the acquisitions and improvements fund for road projects. So those are the main increases in your expenditures. And did anybody have any questions on this statement? Obviously these are summarized information, so we might have to, go back to details in the audit file or whatever to get you answers, but any questions in general there for the governmental funds? Okay. Right, let's take a minute and just review then on page 32 the proprietary funds. This is your income statement for your utility fund, aviation, and cemetery, etc. So operating revenues were up just $500,000 from the previous year. Operating expenses were up 6.6 million, and 4 million of that was an increase in electricity purchases, which I'm sure you're aware of, the cost of power. And then there was a 1.2 million increase in salaries and benefits in these funds. In the non-operating area, which is, about the middle of the page, there were 1.5 million, was up 1.5 million in investment income. As just like in the governmental funds, the investments were turning better investment income. And capital grants were also up from the previous year, 5.6 million. You can see capital grants are about fourth line from the bottom. There was 9.4 million in capital grants there. And that was primarily in the aviation fund for projects going on in the aviation fund. And then one other thing to mention here is in the previous year, there were transfers into the utility funds. And in the current year, there were no transfers. And the prior year, there were 2.1 million in transfers. So that's kind of the summary for the funds.
Could I ask why there would be transfers? I don't understand that part. Thank you.
Transfers are usually given as subsidies between funds. So if you want to subsidize one fund or another fund, you can do a transfer and move resources to another fund. So during this fiscal year, the 2024, there were no transfers between any funds, but in previous years there were.
Between an enterprise fund then?
Yeah.
Okay, but you couldn't out of the general, just between these enterprise funds?
You can actually transfer between any types of funds. You just have to budget for it and make
Okay.
sure that you're, following the rules there, so.
Thank you for the explanation.
Was that due to the unexpected increase in power over that year, and now we've had an adjustment in our utility rates?
I believe that it's, in prior years, it would show up, we do a transfer for some of the services that come out of the general fund. So the accounting, HR, the city manager's office, all of that supports the utility. So they pay a piece for that, and that would be a transfer out of the utility fund and into the general fund. We, at the request of, it's my understanding, at the request of the auditors from prior year, we did that in a different methodology this year. Instead of having it as a transfer, that it was kind of a direct offset. So we just reduce the expenses or increase the expenses depending on which side is coming or going. But typically we don't transfer between the governmental funds and the enterprise funds. We do within the governmental funds, but not in between. So that's why it's not showing up this time.
Okay.
So did those transfers also include like your electrical or water being charged to other government, like Parks and Rec, or did that include that as well?
Is your question that when the city is the customer
Yes.
for electric or
Yeah.
water or whatever? So that is handled, it's just a journal entry that shows up as revenue in the utility and then an expense in the governmental funds.
Okay, so it's not a transfer?
It's not
you're
a
just
transfer,
picking it
no,
up
it's
as
just a transaction
okay.
between the two funds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate that clarification. Thank you. All right, I'm going to go over some slides on fund balance next. And just as a reminder, fund balance is just what resources do we have on hand at a particular point in time. And these graphs should illustrate your fund balance over the last 5 years. And I'm going to have to take my glasses off because I have small numbers here in front of me. So the unassigned fund balance, this is the general fund. Your unassigned fund balance, which is this top line that's orange, went from 25.8 million to 26.4 million. And this represents 7 3/4 months of operating reserves that you have on hand in the general fund. So the base recommendation for a general fund is to have at least 2 months. So you've got 7, almost 8 months on hand in reserve. There is some committed fund balance in the general fund. That's at 8.1 million, and this is the emergency reserve that the city has set aside. So that's a great thing. And then this bottom number, the non-spendable, I don't know if it's even worth talking about, but this is fund balance where you've already purchased inventory or prepaid something. It's already been essentially expended or purchased, and then it will be expended as it's used up in the coming years. So, any questions here? Looks great from my point of view on the general fund. Okay. This is another major fund for the city, the Capital Improvement Fund. And the proceeds from this fund are used for voter-approved projects. So you can see that it's got a nice, what we call northeast trend, 18.7 million to 22.9 million. And this fund accumulates resources related to the sale or lease of Boulder City land.
How is that affected with the recent voter?
So since the election occurred in November, and these are as of June 30th, it's not reflecting the fact that we did receive the voter approval, and we have, in fact, since then transferred, one of those interfund transfers, out of this fund, the full 9 million out of this fund and into the swimming pool fund.
But it does reflect the 7 million from the first time that we had.
Correct, yes, that's
approved.
already reflected in these numbers.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just not the 9.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
The 9 or we also do a voter-approved piece that's, every year we're allowed to transfer 1 million just into the CIP, the overall, to support overall CIP projects. So it would be the 9 million of the voter-approved, recent voter approval, plus the 1 million that we do every year. So it would actually now be about 10 million less.
Okay, so 12, 13.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I just ask a question here?
Certainly.
Not really relevant, but so each year we're going to be transferring 1 million into the swimming pool fund until we have the project completed. Is that correct?
It is not going into the swimming pool fund. It goes into the acquisitions and improvements fund just to support the overall CIP, capital improvement plan of the city. But that's been a long-standing practice. We did get voter approval for that some time ago.
But we can use that 1 million for the pool? No? Am I totally, maybe I'll talk to you later about it.
That's not the plan to go, we're done with transfers into the swimming pool fund at this point.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
All right, great. I'll go next to the utility fund. And the utility fund is a little different than the other funds. It has infrastructure, capital assets that are part of its net position or its fund balance that help deliver services. And so this top line here, the net investment in capital assets, is that system that is used to deliver everything. So it went from 60.3 million to 63.5 million during the year, and this represented some additions to the capital assets. There were 5.1 million in additions. There was a little bit of depreciation on the assets, which would reduce it down to 3.9 million in depreciation. And then any time that you pay off the debt related to those capital assets, that actually bumps it up as well. So there was 1.8 million in debt payments on those. So that's on a good trend. You want to keep your assets vibrant and good to continue to provide services. Then you also have your unrestricted here in the middle. This is the green line, 53.4 million here. It's up just 3 million from the previous year, and this is about 20 months of operating reserves in your utility fund. So good shape there.
How many months again?
20 months.
20 months.
Yeah. And in my slides, I have my notes, so if you need these slides, Cynthia can get those to you as well. And then on the restricted side of things, you've got about 1.6 million there, and this is restricted for capital improvement projects. That's been pretty consistent over the past few years.
Question really
Sure.
fast.
Yep.
So is this is reflective of cost not coming, but we foresee cost coming, right, for the replacement of or refurbishment of the substations, and those are pretty large cost.
Yes, we do see that coming down the road, and that's going to be addressed in the upcoming budget discussions in the next couple of months. But we, along with the Utility Advisory Committee, are working with how to handle the upcoming CIP. We know is going to be really big, and that rolls into a lot of other pieces of the budget and rate studies and that sort of thing.
Even though it looks like here's our 20-month operating cost, it's really by the time we go in and make sure that our system is running correctly and stuff like that, that's going to be changed over the next couple of years.
Yes, because this would be the source of funds to address those
concerns.
capital needs, correct.
Yeah, great observation. And a lot of times it ends up being a combination of issuing debt and using the funds that you have on hand. So having 20 months is a good thing for that. All right. Let's see. I'm on slide aviation fund now. So the aviation fund is looking great. The net investment in capital assets, there was a very large addition to the capital assets in the aviation fund for 7.1 million, and about 800,000 or 900,000 in depreciation there, but it's at 27.3. And then the unrestricted net position was up 527,000 to 3.1 million. And I didn't do the calculations for the reserve there, but that's been holding consistently for
Was
the
this
last 5 years.
$6 million, was it FAA or any kind of grants that were given?
It's definitely an FAA, a grant, certainly. We didn't have the resources without that. A specific project, Mara, do you recall, was that the tower? The what?
Runway.
The runway,
yeah.
yeah, Bravo, I think, was the big one this year that,
I
Yeah.
thought in the
Wrote that
notes it mentioned the tower too. Was that not part of this, or?
I believe we are in the design stage. You may
Okay.
know better than I. We have not done any construction on it yet,
Okay.
but we do have some money invested in the design phase of that project.
Yeah, and I mentioned the capital asset additions were 7.1 million, and the capital grants in this fund were 7.1 million, which makes sense, that those were funded with grants, so. All right, and let's see. Last slide here, just your cash. I know this is a simple graph, may not need to be graphed, but just to show you where you're at in terms of your available resources. You've got governmental was up 4 million from the previous year at 102 and 102 million, and then business type cash was up 1.6 million to 66 million from the previous year. And then finally, this is my slide for my contact information, and I want to just say thank you to Crimson and the other members of the audit team that dug in and assisted here. It's a big team effort, so if you have any questions for myself or for her, this is our contact information, so thanks again. Anything I can answer for the committee?
Any questions? Any thoughts? I'd like to say thank you. I think this is your last year, right?
Yeah.
With this, and we appreciate the services that you provided and come in and done, and it's always been pretty explanatory, which I also appreciate from my background. So thank you very much, Chad.
Sounds great, thank you.
Are we moving right along?
I think we need an action.
Okay,
this-
so
this item?
possible action on
Accepting.
accepting the financial statement. Did you say you were going to comment a little bit on the significant finding?
Yeah, I certainly can. I think Chad covered it very well, that was a unique situation this one year where a very critical time for us for this project is that late spring, early summer timeframe, and we had a vacant accounting manager position, and it put us behind schedule, and that's what the underlying cause was for having this. And we have already addressed, we've hired Amara, she's fabulous. We're working together to put together a more robust project plan, and starting things much earlier and having a more detailed plan so that it does not happen again. That's.
Great, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, yes.
So if we lose another person, we won't be in this position. If something should happen, we're going to be, is that what you're saying? We're going to be prepared, and this,
We'll have a better documentation of our processes. We're working on cross-training so that we don't get into the similar predicament. Amara can't go anywhere, but
I know, I agree with that, but I'm just saying you've come up with a plan. The
Yes.
cross-training is how you're going to do it.
that and better documentation on the processes and timelines associated with it, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to recommend the presentation or the draft that we have here to the city council.
I move to accept the audit report for fiscal year 2024.
I'll second that.
Did you? Oh, yes.
And recommend forwarding it to city
the
council.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, now we go to our last public comment. Would there be anyone in the room or on the phone, 702-589-9629, who would like to participate in public comment at this time? One more time, 702-589-9629 is the phone number for public comment. Do we have anyone on the phone? Okay, thank you. Seeing no one on the phone, we will adjourn. Thank you.